Hello, my name is Teresa. I'm a comic artist and illustrator, and today I bring you a video essay about one of my favorite comic authors, which is Chris Ware. In this video essay, I am going to cover a quick general view of his comics and one reason why you may want to give his work a read. Okay, let's get started with a quick biography and a general view of his work. Chris Ware is an American cartoonist that became primarily known for his 2011 book, Jimmy Corrigan, The Smartest Kid on Earth. This book explores the life of a meek, middle-aged man that sets out to meet the father that abandoned him. Born in the farmlands of Nebraska, Chris Ware was raised by his grandparents and mother. In 1996, while at university, he began to publish his first comic strip in the college newspaper, The Daily Texan. During this period, he also started to feel a tension between his interest in popular culture and comics and his fine art training. He has mentioned in interviews that Robert Crumb's sketchbooks had a big impact on him. Let's hear Danny Gregory's reading one of these interviews for us.
I made tepid attempts at keeping a sketchbook in high school, but nothing ever took, as I was too distracted by the popular culture that surrounded me at the time to stay with anything for more than a few pages. My freshman year in college, I started keeping one simply because I realized that if I didn't start soon, I probably never would. Plus, I was so miserable and lonely at that time, I wanted something in which I could record how fascinating I thought I was. Needless to say, I was fairly disoriented at this point, trying to grow up quickly into the idea of fine art that I was encountering in school, and feeling extremely inadequate in the face of them. This is in the mid-'80s, when so-called postmodern painting was in full bloom, with lots of juxtaposition and overthinking, really confusing me about my own aims and the general viability of doing something directly emotional on the printed page. However, it was about 2 years later that I first encountered the 2001 facsimiles of Robert Crumb's sketchbooks. It was seeing these books that saved my life, I think. I'd already been familiar with Robert Crumb's comics, but had not been aware of the regimen he put himself through to improve his drawing ability, to say nothing of simply trying to see the world as intensely as possible, which is what I'd really wanted to do when I'd originally got to art school, but had lost sight of. In other words, Robert Crumb put me back in touch with myself, which is something I hadn't even realized I'd lost from my childhood until the sketchbook showed me I had. I really think he's one of the most important artists alive for this reason, because his work provides the same honest rudder to a reader, even if he or she isn't an artist.
Now, this is nothing too shocking. Crumb is a huge influence on pretty much any indie American author. New York Times editor Charles McGrath wrote that almost every aspiring graphic novelist goes through a Crumb period, and some never entirely outgrow it. What I find interesting about this Crumb phase is what Chris Ware takes away from it. He didn't take Crumb's narrative model, he didn't start disclosing all his personal fantasies, neither did he grab the visual style. What he took were two things: his work ethic and his honesty in observation. And I think this is a very significant aspect of Ware's creative process, the way he processes influences. He didn't just look at Crumb and appropriated what was appealing in his work. He looked deeper, at the core of what made Crumb able to make comics like he did. And it is this depth in analysis, the curiosity and compassion to go deeper into the essence of characters and stories, what I like most about his work. In my opinion, Ware's style and vision revolve around this core value of deep understanding. Pair that with a relentless work ethic, and what you get are a set of stories that do something that I find extremely hard. He makes regular people fascinating. In Chris Ware's world, the uneventful life of a regular person becomes an enthralling, multi-layer narrative. He does this without any special effects. What I mean is that, despite the fact that he can draw beautifully, his signature style is defined by simple but consistent use of shaped language, basic colors, and a strong emphasis on lettering, graphic design, and formatting. His choices in this regard are not meant to be thrilling or impressive. Neither are his story choices. As I mentioned earlier, his comics deal with fairly average individuals facing regular life challenges. Chris Ware digs deep into his characters' life and experiences. His latest book, Rusty Brown, is a good example of this. The book focuses on a character that originated as a parody of the archetypical popular culture-obsessed collector. In the comic, we look into the roots of this collecting obsession, its consequences, and the mind behind the obsession. This is a general trait of his treatment of character. Chris Ware demonstrates a deep interest and compassion for his characters, and I love that. One particular story that stands out to me as a great example of this trait is Lint. In Lint, we are presented with the life of Jordan or Jason Lint. He goes by both names. I say presented because Lint is a book that makes the effort not to direct the reader with a strong narrative voice. The book appears to be a collection of Jordan's most relevant memories of his life in a stream of consciousness manner. There is no commentary or narration and no guarantee that the events are remembered correctly. What I find interesting about this book is that this is not the story of any character. This is an established character in the Ware universe. Jordan is the school bully that tormented Rusty Brown and Chalky White. The book takes us through a number of Jordan's experiences. He is certainly a bully, and his behavior does not improve as an adult. Ware is not creating a justification for his terrible actions, but there is something about this book, a certain hypnotic quality, that put me right into Jordan's shoes. By the end of the book, I couldn't justify his actions or feel pity for him, like it happens in many bully narratives. He is definitely a terrible person. But weirdly enough, I understood him. I understood why he did all the things he did. So even though I could not sympathize with Jordan because his actions are unjustifiable and just plain wrong, I could empathize with him. So when I finished the book, I was shocked by this, and I wondered how Ware pulled it off. So I went and reread it, and this is what I think is going on. Ware uses a series of symbols, concepts, words, and colors in a repetitive way to trigger associations between different sections of the book. In Lint, the colors red and blue are associated to Jordan's mother and father. Jordan's father is then associated with abusive and self-destructive behavior, and his mom to love. And so, as you read the book, this simple association can greatly affect the way you read a scene. This repetition creates a powerful effect when, for instance, reading a scene about Jordan's abusive behavior, you can't help but be reminded of his father. Mirroring and repetition are used all throughout the book to evoke what each situation is triggering for Jordan, or how his mindset may have changed. One powerful example of the mirroring effect is the two scenes that show what Jordan is reading. In the first scene, the book he's reading is about overcoming abuse by alcoholic parents. In the scene, Jordan is at his most vulnerable, opening up to his future wife about his pain and expressing how grateful he is for having her in his life. This scene and his words are dominated by blue. In contrast, the other two scenes in the same page, where he's with his fraternity friends who are listening to the game in the bathroom, are dominated by red. A few scenes later, we find an older, more mature Jordan. This is the second book scene. The book cover is mirrored here, but this time he's photocopying it at the office. The book is also a self-help book, but in this case it's not a book about healing his trauma, but it's about how to be more efficient at work. The fact that he's reading this new book gives an idea of how Jordan's life and priorities have shifted in the past few years. He's no longer at home, he's at the office, he's no longer with his wife, he's alone, and he's trying to improve his work life rather than his personal life. This shift in focus is all part of a set of scenes that appear to show a repenting, changing Jordan. But soon this focus on his career and the move away from healing will become a central issue in Jordan's trajectory. And this scene clearly shows this slowly changing focus. We don't need Jordan's narrative voice, we can see in this simple action how he's in a different headspace. In my opinion, this mirroring and repetition technique is crucial to creating a connection between the different scenes of the book. Otherwise, the book would just be a random collection of events rather than a narrative. However, the recurrent motifs and themes in a book are nothing new, yet many books that utilize this technique don't achieve this effect, so it's not just that, is it? So I went back and reread again, and I found another narrative technique that I find very interesting. The technique is the use of foreshadowing and effective narration to generate intrigue. From the beginning of the book, there is a constant build-up from absolute confusion to clarity. Through the repetition and mirroring, the scenes that are presented at the beginning are clarified, expanded, or given a new meaning later on in the book. When it starts, all you have is the confusing first impressions of a firstborn. You just can't tell exactly what happened in certain moments of his childhood because they are presented in the way a baby or a toddler would perceive and understand them. And sometimes there are even misremembered events or events that have false memories. One example of this is when I first read Lint, I thought that the first page was just a blank page with a few dots to decorate it. But when I turned the page, I realized that it was the beginning of the story. The first page is Jordan's conception. Later on, during his teen and adult life, when Ware can't play on Jordan's defective perception, we are faced with a crucial omission. For instance, Jordan attributes his first divorce to a lack of sex. But we later find out that he was abusive towards his youngest child, and he's not allowed in the house. As Jordan grows older, those missing bits of information have a ripple effect, and they become more meaningful and come back to shape his future. These early elements only make sense later, as we examine their development and consequences. So as you read the book, the parts that you read previously are understood in one way, and then given extra meaning and context and understood in a different way later. So the reading experience feels like a constant unraveling of hidden information. Every new episode in Jordan's life echoes back into the past and ripples into the future, creating a strong sense of unity and meaning in the whole book. Now, of course, this is just the tip of the iceberg, and Ware uses a lot more techniques, and he's very proficient in using visuals to guide the reader. What I like about him is that he uses these techniques to present nuanced, multi-layer narratives that invite the reader to see characters in wider, more complex contexts. In the pages of his comics, Rusty the obsessive nerd, Jordan the bully, Jimmy the pushover, and the nameless run-of-the-mill protagonist of building stories become much more than what they appear to be at the surface level. Ware invites the reader to see regular human beings for the fascinating, complex creatures they really are. He does all these minute technical work so that we can sit and take in how fascinating these characters are, and how these labels we put on them don't really mean that much. And that is why I love his work so much. And that's it. I hope you enjoyed the video. I don't have a clear idea of what I'm gonna do for my next video essay. They take a while to make, so if you have any suggestions of authors or comics that you would like me to make a video essay on, please leave a comment down below and I'll be brainstorming the different possibilities for the next video. Until then, I hope you enjoy it and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye!